Hello, and welcome to another great show of Building Experiences with Mark Schultz. That's me. Today we're going to talk about single-page applications and how to work with Adobe Experiences to get the best bang for buck, making sure that not only can you build these great experiences, but making sure that the people with the right information, the subject matter experts, can go in and edit them and make them and keep them current. So, of course, I always want to bring in the experts, but before I do that, I just want to remind everyone, if you want to make sure that you are aware of when these shows happen, and so you can live and add commentary, then hit the subscribe button right now. The subscriber count's going up, and thank you everyone who is joining the show regularly. It's great to get the feedback. But let's bring on our guest for today. Zoran and Danny, welcome.
Hey, Mark.
It's great to have you back.
Great to be here. Good to be here.
Yeah, Zoran, third time, second time. Becoming part of the regular panel. It's always good to have you guys on the show. How's life from home? Zoran, you're in deeper lockdown again?
We are, yeah. Melbourne's quite strict at the moment. It's good so far. I mean, we can still get out. We can still grab some fresh air. So all good. Hopefully we'll be out of it pretty soon.
Yeah. And Danny, how you doing?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. I actually think we might be, fingers crossed, turning some sort of corner. So
it's good to hear.
Yeah, hanging in there.
Good to hear. And how's work life treating you? Like, what are you working on right now?
I'm actually working a little bit with launch and AEM integration, and working on some actual content around integrating analytics and targets with AEM, and now that everything's part of AEM as a cloud service, it's pretty cool because a lot of it's pretty seamless. You don't even really need to bust open the HTML code anymore in the AEM page. A lot of it's just it's all done through a series of UIs, and it's all through the product switcher, and it's nice. It's promising. It's really looking like more like instead of 2-3 products, like a cohesive one solution. So it's pretty fun.
And for people who don't know what launch is, it's effectively tag management and a lot more, right?
Yeah, you can define all kinds of different rules. There's a whole bunch of extensions, not just for Adobe Experience Cloud products, but other products as well. And you can kind of manage all of these different tags, in a central location and deploy them asynchronously to your website. So it's pretty powerful.
Sounds like there's a future episode coming up. Zoran, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Look, talking to customers a lot about what we're going to talk today.
Yep.
Single page apps is obviously a very, very interesting and important topic. Oddly enough, the other kind of component to my life lately has been talking about an integration that we've sort of forgotten a little bit about, which is the integration between AEM and Campaign. That's still there, and it still works. So yeah, that we've been exploring that with some customers and looking at how we can integrate that furthermore with things like experience fragments and content fragments.
Nice. So, I mean, you mentioned the topic of today, single page applications. Before we get into the detail, let's talk a little bit about SPA in general. Like it's gone from this, kind of cool way for developers to just kind of, re-architect the code on their page to, redefining an experience, right? And becoming pretty much the norm or the expected norm from an experience. Zoran, it sounds like you're seeing that a lot with customers trying to work out how to do this.
Yeah, and I mean, anecdotally, I think that the first time that I stumbled upon single page apps and trying to work it out in AEM was probably about 4 years now. So relatively early in the journey for some of our customers, and that was an interesting thing to solve at the time. So obviously we've made some pretty big strides lately, but yeah, it's always been the challenge of how to bring that kind of rich experience and combine it with the power of content authoring in AEM.
And to be clear, right, we're talking about frameworks like React and Angular, and at first glance, everyone looks at these technologies and says, well, this is for developers, right? And I don't need necessarily a content management system to build SPA. But Danny, you've been obviously working a lot with the SPA editor from Adobe, and the intent of getting content authoring back into that workflow.
Yeah, exactly. I think developers, who has the power in the marketing org has shifted a little bit, where developers are coming out with these. Using these frameworks to deliver these awesome experiences. And what we've seen is that, maybe the marketers and the, business persona is getting left behind a little bit, where, you almost reverted to a situation where, hey, we need to update this. Let me get on the telephone, call my developer, and he makes this simple text change, or he swaps out this image carousel.
Yeah.
So.
Which no one
that's
wants to
kind
do,
of
right?
where
like
that's a efficient workflow.
Yeah.
No. So the SPA editor with AEM, we're trying to kind of bridge that, combine kind of the best of both worlds. Still allow enable the front end developers to work with the technology that they're excited about, but enable our marketers and business users to update the site or app.
Cool. So, I mean, we're going to dive into these topics in a bit of detail. So, Danny, you're going to give us an overview of the SPA editor and show us through some of the new weekend tutorial updates. And then, Zoran, you're going to give us some tips and tricks around server-side rendering, which is obviously something very important to make sure that our SPA is performing well and picked up by SEO, etc. So let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah,
sounds good.
All right, so I asked Danny to give us an update of what's happening with the SPA editor within Experience Manager. As you know, Danny built the awesome weekend tutorial to walk you through how to work with the SPA editor to walk through that. So Danny, do you want to share your screen and maybe walk through some of this for us?
Yeah, sure thing. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
We can.
All right, awesome. See, I'll start in AEM, just in the AEM sites console. I've got, the weekend site, which is kind of our traditional AEM site. We've talked a little bit about that in previous episodes. And then I've got these two other hierarchies here, React and Angular. And they look just like AEM pages. They look like AEM content. When we and how an author interacts with them is the authoring experience is designed to be very similar to traditional sites authoring. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up this React homepage. And so as a content author, you want to be able to add new components, change out images, modify the text, and all of these capabilities are there. So we'll update this. Last mark. That's a bonus topic. What Mark is up to this weekend.
I don't think people want to know. Like, it's not.
I don't know. I heard you had some exciting news. Maybe it's not for public sharing yet, but anyways, Asset Finder, switching out images, adding new components. If we want to add just a simple image. So all of those kind of core capabilities that you expect from AEM are there.
And I think just to hop in there.
Yeah.
If you're looking at this for the first time, you think, well, hang on, isn't this just normal AEM? And that's kind of the point, right? It's that if you're a content author, whether it's a normal page or a SPA, we kind of don't want you to worry about that. Just like, over the years, we haven't wanted you to worry about if it's HTML5 or HTML4 or responsive or not. You just author content. And then if there's specific things, then you can, of course, take advantage of that. But I'm sure from a developer perspective as well, if you're watching this thinking, oh my God, what am I going to have to do to actually get this integrated so an author can do stuff? Can I just use a headless CMS instead? So I'm sure you're going to, give us a bit of a view of that.
Yeah, definitely. And also from just for customers who already have a traditional site and maybe want to develop a new property using SPA or something, this is going to, because it's the same experience, it's not an author retraining thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Same content as well. And, a question for both of you. I think we are seeing that it's not all or nothing. There are parts of the site that are SPA. There are parts that are, traditional sites as we know it. And I think we will see a blend over time, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of hybrid deployments.
Yeah, absolutely. And even on the SPA end of thing, that this doesn't mean that everything on that page needs to be as well. So you can mix and match sort of purely SPA applications with authorable content as well. So yeah, you get a fairly flexible framework.
Right.
Yeah. So let me continue here and actually show the SPA portion. I'm just gonna view it outside of the AEM editor just so we can get it kind of an idea. And as I navigate to maybe some of these different pages, it might be a little tough to see over just the screen share, but there's no page refresh. All of the content is here. We are in fact in a single page application, but from just a website look and feel, all the user cares about is like, hey, I know how to interact with this, and this is really fast. If we actually can go and inspect the source a little bit here, I'm actually gonna just toggle this WCM mode equals it kind of simulates what the experience like for in a publish environment, and it removes any of the AEM authoring UI. It just cleans up the markup so we can kind of get a better look at this. And as we inspect it, we had some images, we had some content, but when we look at this source, you can see really we're just loading a few JavaScript files, and the entire rendering is actually delegated to, in this case, a React single-page application. And the SPA editor, by default, it supports React and Angular frameworks. And the kind of connection, basically AEM is going to store all of the content, the text content for this text, the images, all of that, and then it's actually going to surface the content as JSON, and that's kind of the glue. So let me pull that up. Go here. So if we navigate into, let's see here, let's inspect this card example. So this is the content that AEM is serving up, and we're actually going to let our SPA decide exactly how and the formatting of how to render this content. And if you're familiar with SPA development, both React and Angular have this concept of components, and so it fits quite nicely with the design design pattern that AEM already has, because AEM's been doing kind of this sort of component breaking down a page into now. And the kind of the basic premise is that we're mapping this content coming from AEM, that's our component, to the SPA component. And this sort of resource type here, this is kind of the glue that brings them together. So that's kind of what it looks like, just kind of inspecting it. On the we can bring up the code though on the SPA side. So I'm just going to jump into Visual Studio Code here. And we were kind of looking at that card component. This is the project I'm working with, and this one is a React project. We've got sample projects for both Angular and React. But if we look at this card component, this is pretty much a React component. It's expecting some of these properties to be passed into the component, and then on the front end side, on the React side, that's going to on the React component is fully in charge of actually rendering the card, the image, that call to action link, and so you can kind of see that everything here is totally on the React side, and basically there's a few methods exposed by SPA Editor SDK. One of those, the important ones, is called map2. This helps glue the JSON content and inject into our React component. So other than sort of the requirement to have this kind of notation associated with each of your components in order to properly map them, after that, you as the front end developer can really decide how you want to render that content. So in Visual Studio, or if we go back to the JSON model real quick, these are the properties that pass to you, and you as the front end developer, you're in charge exactly of what you're going to do with them. So if we look at like this card last modified, this is actually the time in milliseconds, I believe, just to make it give the front end developer a lot more flexibility with how they decide to render that time and date stamp. So in this case, it's just a very simple month, day, year, and then you can kind of see that in the code. It's just a simple JavaScript to local date string. So yeah, that's kind of the high level, I guess, of maybe we went a little fast. Zoran, Mark, I've been working with this for a while. Anything that I've missed so far?
Well, I think
exactly
the
the
you know
same.
the key thing to get your head around, from my view, when I was just like, it was probably the third time I kind of hacked away and built something. I went, this is a lot easier than what I actually thought it was at first glance, right? So you look and you go, oh my god, I'm trying to map this, and I've got components. And it's like, well, no, really, all you're trying to like the AEM parts. All you're trying to do is make it editable. So if you just think traditionally how you build a page, you throw components on it, you fill in the boxes with the content, and instead of spitting out HTML, we're spitting out JSON, right?
Yeah.
If I understand correctly, is that the React app is basically you're building a React app like you always would, but then you're just saying, okay, for each of these components, map the output to a React component, and then take the properties and actually bind them into the areas you want, right? So on both sides, there's actually minimal work to do. AEM content is like I always do. The only difference and the kind of glue is rendering the React application within the SPA editor, so it's authorable, and I'm getting the rendering happening via SPA as opposed to the traditional AEM components, but I'm still using the components, for an editing perspective. Did I summarize it
Yeah.
correctly?
Yeah,
I think that's right on.
you
Good,
did an excellent job.
good, good.
I mean,
Zoran, you've been doing quite a bit of work with this as well.
yeah, there's quite a few things that are going under the covers of that SPA editor node module, which map to is obviously the I guess the really important glue that brings the two worlds. But underneath that, the code also renders all of the required information to make the page authorable in AEM. So effectively, when when in this case React serves up the markup to the AEM editor, it comes with all the tags in place that AEM understands how to then lay out the editor view on top of the page,
Yep.
which is the key. And yeah, like Danny mentioned before, it all is bound together by that JSON contract. So if you think about the developer process around that, it really that JSON becomes the contract that everyone adheres to, which makes things simple, because JSON is very easy to understand, rather than having to have intimate knowledge about how AEM produces that JSON.
Yeah, and it obviously takes advantage of the core components and having a whole library of them that I can draw from, which of course, apart from the presentation, already have that model defined, which is why in the core components website it calls out how they render, but also what the JSON model looks like. So therefore, if you are a front end dev and you're saying, okay, I've got this widget I need to make editable, I can quickly scan through that list of what are we at, like 37 or so components, and see which one is appropriate, and then bring that in. Danny, the obvious question is, well, what if I've got something custom, right? I've got some widget that's, doesn't look anything like something that I would normally have on an AEM page. How do I, what does that look like?
Yeah, good question. I think one key things you want to decide up front when you're starting to plan this out is whether an author is going to edit this component, whether it's an authourable component, whether they want to change any of the content inside of it,
Yep.
and also whether you want a content author to be positioning it on the page. And so as you start to dig in, there's a few different ways that I think you can look to handle this. Especially, I think a lot of customers are looking more at having just a section of the page that's for content authors, and then the rest of it is their traditional SPA.
Yep.
And there's a few different ways that you can approach that. There is basically you can make the SPA editor portion as small as you want, and kind of build the rest of your static SPA components around that. And you can even you can also use the AEM template editor. So if you're familiar with that, you're able to actually create kind of these pretty rigid templates.
Yep.
They're still using the SPA components, but a day-to-day author isn't going to modify them. So you can kind of fine tune and get some granular control over the authoring experience.
And I'm assuming you could therefore gradually enhance the authorability. Like you could just start off with some very simple like text and maybe a couple of changes, but then over time, you know, make more things authorable. And I know we've got customers, they've started letting people change the labels of the wizards, and then starting to get even more detailed in, you know, changing the rates within a calculator. So yeah, some good examples. We do have a question come in via the live stream around the SDK. I'll just bring that up. You know, is the code for the SDK going to be open source? And you know, some examples of that.
Yeah, very good question. Now I know that it's on the roadmap to be open sourced. So when that's going to happen exactly, I can't give you an exact date, but it's definitely going to be open source sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I would imagine, given what we've done with, you know, the core components and, you know, most of the project associated code within AEM, you know, I've definitely heard the same thing. We just can't comment on timeline right now, unless Danny, you've got some breaking news.
No breaking news yet, but it's definitely on the roadmap. You know, that's kind of unless it's like an authoring tool, you know, we want to put as many of these SDKs and core components open source as possible, because we know that so many customers, you know, they want to extend these libraries and see how they work. So
yep, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right, is there anything else you wanted to show us?
Yeah, let me do a quick little demo of the Webpack. So I think this is one of the more exciting things, especially for if you're a front-end developer, or really just any developer. I enjoyed working this way immensely. React and Angular have the idea of these development servers that you can spin up within the project and just do these rapid updates and just see the UI changing in real time. The advantage of this, as opposed to, you know, opening up your Chrome developer tools, modifying CSS, coming back to your IDE, making the change, deploying it, you know, that if you do that, you know, 150 times a day, that's going to be pretty slow. So one of the nice things is that we've set up the project so that you can actually proxy just that JSON model and then use the Webpack development server. So stop and we'll start this up. So and we've also tried to keep the sample projects that get generated by the archetype, both React and Angular, pretty close to what you would do if you were setting up a pure React or you know, pure Angular project, and just adding in the hooks that you need. So this is on localhost 3000. This is my kind of static Webpack server. You can see that's pulling in all of that AEM content. It looks the same as my local AEM environment. But if I want to start experimenting with some of these styles, I can just do this right from the IDE. So you know, with this header component, we want to mess around, make that, you know, bright green, maybe a nice,
I think that's
nice
good.
shade of pink.
Yeah, well, pink might be even better.
Yeah.
So you can start to, you know, for CSS changes, that's useful, and of course, you know, you can edit the app as well. So, you know, if you want to, I don't know, let's go into the card renderer, and we should start adding some, you know, we want to experiment adding a new div or something here. We can kind of, you know, start modifying the component code itself and just see that render happen in real time. And by doing this, one, it's in source control already. It's part of your project. You can see, if your project's under source control, you can see, hey, you know, these are the files modified so far. And because we're using the same JSON model, and Zoran was talking about that contract, when I deploy this code to the running AEM instance, I can be pretty confident, highly confident that it's going to render like I was expecting. So I think with one of the challenges, and we've talked a little bit about this with traditional sites development, is a lot of times for big projects you have that dedicated front end team, and they kind of throw that code over the wall, and when you put it in, things don't exactly render as you were expecting. So
Yeah.
I think this is a nice feature, and it solves actually kind of a lot of things, especially with a big development team.
I think one of the things I really like about that process, and it's equally true for normal site development, is that we've taken away a lot of the pain for new AEM developers around managing client libs and getting them built and deployed and into AEM. And just, if you're new to AEM, it's kind of a dark art. You can get started now, and all of that is, packaged up via, what the archetype sets up for you, which is great. So you can, you obviously need to know a little bit about AEM as a front end dev to keep working and updating a project. But talk to me about like different roles. Like, where do you see the work within a project around an AEM dev, a front end dev, and how they work together?
Yeah, so I think you definitely still need an AEM, someone who's experienced with AEM involved in the project. But instead of the AEM developer also being in control or responsible for all the CSS, all the UI, all the markup, instead they're really just focused on populating that JSON model. Yep. And getting those attributes available to the front end components. So you kind of have this nice separation of responsibilities. And then on the front end side, it's definitely helpful to understand how the component's going to be used in AEM, especially with that an author might put it anywhere on the page, or they might resize it. I think those are things to be aware of. But day to day in the majority of your development, you're kind of just coding against these sort of static properties that are going to be there, and it can kind of you can ease your way in to AEM. AEM's a big thing. You don't have to spend get going and start contributing pretty quickly.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, and even with teams that are already built single page apps that are not really connected to AEM, and at some point AEM becomes part of the mix. We've had quite a lot of success with kind of integrating existing single page apps using this framework into and exposing some authourable elements directly from AEM. So it is a very easy learning curve to get through, so that you can start getting some real value out of it.
Yeah, and I'll plug the tutorial.
Please do.
while I'm here. So yeah, our team just recently published new updates, getting it up to speed with the latest archetype core components. And so there's basically what we're demoing today. There's or what I just demoed. It's all in there. It takes you through step by step. And there's a couple new chapters around creating a completely custom component, and as well as extending some of the core components. And so I think it's good to have an understanding of how everything is put together, but a majority of the work on a customer project is going to be around creating those custom components, those net new ones that are very specific to your project, and then extending the AEM core components where you see fit.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Another question came in. I'll bring it up on the screen. Could this be used not for an entire SPA, but just for a component? For example, let AEM recognize components rendered by React inside a component and allow authoring. So not full screen SPA, but SPA within a component.
Not quite. So the SPA editor is designed to work with the whole page. So it starts at that root level of the page hierarchy and works its way down. So the SPA editor lens is gonna come with the page. But saying that, and this is what we talked about before, it's that there's nothing stopping from having the majority of the page be a bespoke SPA, and then have a dedicated area within that SPA, which is the authorable bit that the SPA editor implementation is going to recognize and generate the right AEM authoring placeholders.
So I guess, there's obviously a question around, okay, I want to make this authorable. Do I build some component? Do I take a headless approach? I'm putting a component on the page, but I'm managing the content somewhere else and then just binding the two?
Yeah.
Or do I make the full, environment, completely SPA editor compliant?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know where you want me to paste this, or I can send it to you, Mark, in the chat. Let me see here.
You can put it in the show notes later on. Yep.
In the show notes. Yeah. So there is a library called React Web Component. It's part of the Adobe org. I would feel free to investigate this. I think it's a promising area as well. The idea is, you still need to have some AEM HTL, but you basically create a custom element and you pass in, you basically create this React Web Component. So to, author, you're able to change some of the properties you're going to pass into that component and see it reflected, but still manage it using React. And I think a similar approach has been used, Mark, as on the commerce side, right?
Yeah.
So like the shop art for the commerce integration, that's actually a React Web Component. They manage all of the rendering and everything in React, but it actually just gets embedded as a section of the AEM page. So there's some precedent, and there's some examples out there in the world.
Good. Well, I'm thinking we might need to give Zoran some time. Danny, is there anything else you want to share before we change topics?
No. Take it over, Zoran.
All right, well, Zoran. So obviously, server-side rendering is a topic up all the time, and Zoran, you have been doing a lot of work helping customers understand what's possible. So I thought it'd be great if you talk about, okay, we've got a single-page app, and we know that we want to have it pre-compiled effectively, maybe using the SPA editor ideally, but maybe not. So what can people do?
Yeah, great question. And and it's good that we actually have an answer for this. But you're right. I mean, whenever the topic of single page apps comes up in the discussion, there's always the follow-up question around, especially for customers that are sort of a little bit further in their adoption of single page apps, and so the topic of SEO comes up quite often. I mean, obviously, with single-page apps rendering on the client side, you, as Danny showed before, you kind of just get this div that is the placeholder for the application, and then JavaScript takes over and does everything else. Now, web crawlers, especially Google's web crawler, are becoming a lot better in this area, and they're actually able to crawl single-page apps and understand what's going on. But still, it's worthwhile to investigate into the concept of server-side rendering to further improve that, and also get additional benefits. So things like contacting your backend services from your own server rather than the front end, and so that becomes a lot secure. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know when you can, when you guys can see
Yeah,
it.
we can see it.
Excellent. So we developed a concept in AEM called remote rendering, and it applies. It's important to note that it's not simply designed just for single page app. It applies to basically AEM needing to contact anything else remote outside of AEM, and then and pull some content server-side rendering concept really well. In a very simplistic way, what happens is when the page is loaded up in AEM, rather than just the JavaScript being rendered on top and handling the presentation layer, what actually happens is AEM contacts a server, which then does the actual rendering of the structure, server-side rendering concept, and then on top of that, there's the JavaScript applied to kind of finish up the presentation and enable all the interactivity. So,
hey, before you go on, this
yeah.
sounds like there's a lot of pieces here. From a user perspective, like I'm a content author, do I need to like go in and run a workflow, or like when I build pages, do I need to do anything differently?
No, absolutely, and that's the beauty of it. From a content author perspective, or even an end user perspective, the net result is absolutely the same.
Yep.
So, case in hand, the page that you guys are looking on my screen, that's effectively which looks similar to what Danny showed before. This is a server-side rendered page. I can still go through and select all my components. I can go in and change change content. So because we're in Melbourne, I'm gonna put a little message out there to the world.
Yeah, I think that's for the whole world, not just for Melbourne. But
yeah. But also because Danny mentioned it, I'm just gonna use these three images to kind of give you a bit of a hint about Mark's weekend.
Everyone's going to think I'm a surfer now.
Why not? Well, we're in Australia. But the point is, I can still do exactly the same behavior as I would in what Danny just showed with the SPA editor, or any other page in AEM for that matter. So I can go in and add content. I can drag and drop in an image and so on and so forth. Where the difference is, if I go and look at this page and see how it looks like it's published. If I look at the page source, what you're going to notice is that rather than just that one single div, I actually have the full page markup rendered in. Now, this is still a React page. One way to kind of, if I can convince you, there's this little widget that they use to say that this page is using the latest production build of React. There as a quick little proof. But what this in the background, this is contacting a server and a runtime function that I'm hosting. And if you guys watched I think it was the episode a couple of episodes ago when the guys were talking about Project Firefly, that's effectively the engine that runs Project Firefly. Also is where I run my server-side rendering function. So that's also a possibility to achieve. And so just by adding a simple little change to the implementation, where all I needed to do was tell my page, and I'm just going to zoom in real quick. Tell my page that I need to that it's going to have to call a backend servlet. That's going to do the server-side rendering call out function, and I just have information to let that AEM servlet know where it needs to call out. And so that's that added relationship. But like I said, the benefits to that is quite simply the same. It's just that the outcome of the page rendering means that I have a full markup rendered out on screen. hence benefits the SEO, performance benefits, because AEM is actually going to cache or Dispatcher is going to cache the full page markup as well.
To play devil's advocate, Zoran,
Please.
Does that mean that you have to maintain 2 sets of front end components?
No. Great question. If anyone in the audience is familiar with the concept of server-side rendering, the actual React code base is one and the same. So what in your example rendered the content out on the browser is exactly the same code that renders out my content for my page. So it's kind of there is some additional code that needs to be written on the React side to enable the server-side rendering, but it's not that you need to build components specifically for that.
And let's talk through that for a moment. So you mentioned a couple of elements. So how much additional work is required on the React side, and is it anything unique to AEM, or is it general server-side rendering techniques?
No, look, this is genuine server-side renderings for any single page app. The fact that this just communicates with AEM is not necessarily does not necessarily add any complexity. It's like with any other service that your application is gonna call. All it does is it calls out to AEM to grab that JSON payload, then run through the rendering process and send back the rendered HTML. Now, obviously, the actual fact of server-side rendering itself adds a bit of complexity to the single page app, but that's again the domain of single page apps, which is very well understood.
Yeah, and you mentioned Firefly. For customers are thinking, well, do I have do I have access to Firefly? Right now, there is a trial program, but my general recommendation is talk to your Adobe account team, and they can hook you up. Yeah. There's, we want to give you access to that as part of the overall AEM experience. But yeah, reach out to the account team on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, if you're familiar with writing server-side rendering code in Node, it's relatively similar.
Now, another question's coming in about non-isomorphic components and.
Yeah. Now we ran a POC about this with a customer recently using Next.js, which is an isomorphic React server, and again, we managed to deliver that kind of a combined authored and non-authored experience within components, where part of the component is the authorable element, and then the rest gets handled by pure React. So it's definitely
awesome. What else you got?
Yeah. That was from a server-side rendering perspective. I guess that was kind of the crux of it. I really just wanted to. Just wanted to highlight that kind of a process that it's not anything challenging or complex to achieve. A lot of the wiring and plumbing that is required to connect AEM to any backend service is already part of the platform. So yeah, it's just a matter of connecting the two worlds.
So I know you and Danny are working at sharing best practice around this in the future, but if someone wants to get started now, walk me through what are the high level steps that they need to consider
from a server-side rendering perspective.
So got my SPA, it's running beautifully, I can author it, the world is happy, but I just want to go server-side rendering. Yeah,
so the first step that you would need to do is to get your React application independently server-side rendering. So again, Danny showed you the process of working with the built-in React Webpack development server. It's absolutely there still. So the first step would be to get that successfully up and running. Then once you have your server-side rendering in place, it's just a matter of connecting AEM to that, and then making sure that everything works. But yeah, it's really a simple process to get from a client-side rendered application to server-side rendered application once your server-side rendering is in place.
Fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we're getting close to the end. Danny, Zoran, it's always a pleasure to have you both on the show. Any parting words of wisdom that you want to share with the audience?
Let's see. I'll give these links to Mark to put in the show notes. But yeah, we've got a few pages of documentation that gives you kind of the high level overview of server-side rendering, and then their image in the Weekend SPA tutorial code repo that Zoran has authored that gives you a start as well as something to run. We're gonna be working on creating some more of that step-by-step tutorial, so you can get that transition a little easier.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
and yeah, I'll definitely put them in the show notes. Zoran, how about you?
From my perspective, look, I would highly recommend that everyone's that interested in this visit the weekend tutorial. I mean, it was the place where I started when I needed to get across this, and it definitely helped a lot in the journey. The other thing, I mean, I would put it out to the people that are on the live stream right now and that are going to watch it later. I would really like to see sort of some unique examples of where you guys can get this to stretch. We've seen client-side rendering, server-side rendering. We've done a number of POCs where even the whole page or the application completely lives outside of AEM. So it is a very, very flexible framework to work with. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to see some examples.
Yeah, and you know, we have a whole bunch of customers who've done some live work. I don't have written permission to share them on this show, so I'm not going to. But the examples are out there, and so you know, I guess for anyone who's interested in doing this, this is not new technology by any means. The SPA Editor is not new. And you know, we're looking at new use cases around, you know, all the extra things that are around it, like server-side rendering. So guys, thank you, and I don't think I have to ask anymore if I can get you for another show. You both repeat members, and all welcome. Danny, I'm going to hold you to that session coming up in the future. Sounds like you've got some cool stuff coming up as well, and Zoran. So look, let's wind up there. To everyone watching, if you haven't already and you've got this far through the show, hit the subscribe button so you can join the fun again in the future. You know, if you can join live, it's always great because you can ask questions, as you've seen in the session today. Coming up in the near future, we're going to be doing some sessions around Cloud Manager. We've got the product manager that we're working with there. Also, PWA, a topic that, of course, is very aligned to what we just talked about with single page applications, but looking broader at what you can do, and actually working with the Magento team on that and what they've done with their PWA Studio. So a couple of sessions coming up in the near future, and of course, always interested in hearing from you what topics you want to see. That's it for today. Thank you for joining. See you all soon. Stay